Hello, everyone. This is Kit Cabela of Heartlands Media. We are wrapping up the Our Revolution Fair Elections Town Hall. We are joined here today with one of the speakers, and we've interviewed him numerous times before, Senator Daniel Biss. He's running for governor of Illinois. Senator Daniel Biss, thank you so much for joining Heartlands Media.
Hey, it's good to be back, Kit.
So, essentially, in this forum, we were talking about the impact of money in politics and really building a system in which the American people can benefit from a system in which they can elect candidates that will represent their issues. But there's a lot of concern specifically about money in politics. So how do we basically deal with the monoliths that Citizens United and to another extent the McCutcheon's decision?
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has really made awful, dangerous decisions that have opened the floodgates for massive amounts of corporate money and money from very rich individuals, mostly billionaires, to pollute our political system. Obviously, in the long term, we have to repeal those decisions, but the good news is in the meantime, there are great things we can do on the state level. I was the proud sponsor of a bill, Senate Bill 1424, to create what's called a small donor matching system, something that already exists in New York City and LA, something that says that if a candidate is willing to voluntarily cap their contributions at a more reasonable level, then the small contributions they get are matched 6-to-1. So if someone gives them $25, that's matched with 150 and becomes 175. So the $25 donor all of a sudden has their voice amplified, and the billionaire donor has their voice quieted. That system changes our government instantaneously. In New York City, it's made their city council less white, more female, younger, more politically independent, more progressive. In other words, more like the public. And that's what we really need.
Now, of course, we've seen firsthand in regards to Illinois, people want to really change the state for the better, but sadly there are some districts that have been abandoned by the Democratic Party, and midterms have a sad history in which it's a low voter turnout. So essentially, one, what kind of campaign outreach will the Democrats need to do to really effectively reach districts that they have abandoned here in Illinois? And two, how do we really rebuild trust in a system that really doesn't represent a lot of people?
Yeah. Listen, look at the election that happened in Virginia very recently. There were candidates for the Virginia House of Delegates who won as Democrats in districts that did not used to have any competitive race at all. If you compete everywhere, if you show up everywhere, if you organize everywhere, if you listen everywhere, you can win everywhere. But even more important than winning everywhere is about having a party that truly represents all of the people. When the Democratic Party writes off rural areas because they don't think they're going to win races in this cycle, they're telling people in those areas, we don't care about your opinion. When the Democratic Party takes its base for granted, taking black voters for granted, taking Latinos for granted, it's telling people in these communities, we don't think we have to fight for you, so we're not going to represent you either. That is a disaster for our democracy. It's a disaster for our party. We have to stop listening to big money and start listening to ordinary people. It's time to have elections, not auctions.
Now, of course, the pushback comes from corporate media and establishment candidates in which they say, well, this candidate's getting this amount of money, but that still doesn't mean that they're a bad person or that their opponent's worse than them. It's the same back and forth system that we've seen in regards to neoliberalism. So essentially, what do you want to say to those critics who say that getting money out of politics isn't going to solve anything?
It has nothing to do with who's a bad person. It has to do with how our democracy works. Is our democracy responsive to people, or is it responsive to dollars? And if you look at the outcomes in Illinois, where the rich get off without paying their share in taxes and their burden is shifted to the middle class and the working poor, where children in poor communities don't have access to adequately funded public schools because of the zip code they're born in, where corporations get big handouts, but we keep on nickel-and-diming poor people with fees, where college tuition is too high, where social services aren't available, we don't have health care for all. Why is that? Well, I don't know, but it's a system that benefits the very rich, and they're the ones who pay for the campaigns. I don't think it's a coincidence.
All right, and final question, specifically related to the Democratic Party. With the recent revelations that there's been talk about the Bernie Sanders campaign basically being rigged against during the 2016 primary, as well as the recent purges that happened at the main national party, a lot of people are critical of the Democratic Party in regards to it really representing the people or following through with progressive ideals. So essentially, what's really needed to reform the Democratic Party so that it can actually, represent voters and constituents who might want to vote Democrat?
We need a party that unites around a progressive economic vision and includes everyone, lets everyone in, doesn't bar the door for people based on who they supported in 2016, doesn't bar the door for people based on their bank account, that says everyone can be let in. The last thing we need is a Democratic Party that circles the wagons around one candidate because they're a billionaire and says that's got to be our nominee, The last thing we need is a Democratic Party that says we don't care about a broad, progressive grassroots movement. What we need is a party to allow the people to rise up and take control not only of the Democratic Party, but of the state of Illinois and the country. That's good politics, but even better, that's how to transform our country.
All right, and final question. Where can our viewers, subscribers learn more about your campaign and follow you on social media?
Our website is danielbiss.com, and again, Biss is B as in boy, ISS as in Sam, danielbiss.com. We're Twitter at Daniel Biss, Facebook.com/Daniel Biss. We'd love to communicate with people, hear from people. We want people involved in the movement that we are building to transform our state, and we want to make sure that everyone's voice gets heard.
All right, thank you so much for joining us again. This is Kit Cabela of Hard Lens Media. Peace, everyone. Let's all do what we can to build a better future.
You're watching Hard Lens Media.